Well, good morning, First Free Church. It's great to be with you this morning. Good to see you've survived the hot weekend. I spent a couple summers down in Houston, Texas. If you haven't been down to Houston, their summers are just yesterday all summer long. And so I can remember one time, it was a particular day with 3-digit temperature and 90-something% humidity. And I remember hearing someone give such an apt description of what we've been feeling this summer. He said, man, when I walk out the front door of my house, it's just like I take a step out and I just walk into a dog's mouth, right? And that's a pretty good description of what we've been experiencing this summer. So hopefully it'll get a little cooler. But we're continuing our series called People Are Asking. And I'm so excited about this question that we have here for you this morning to talk about. The question is, how do we invest in the next generation? How do we invest in young people? I can say that now because I woke up with a stiff back this morning. So how do we invest in the next generation? And I love this question. I love this topic. And it's not just because I've spent 9 years now serving in student ministries, but it's because I think it's such an important thing for us to ask, and it's such an important thing for us to engage with, is the next generation, because they're our future, not just of the church, but of our society as a whole, of humanity in general. And so God's word has something to speak on this. I mean, God himself, when he's speaking to the Israelites in the book of Deuteronomy, and he's giving them the law and instructions for how they ought to live as a community, as God's special chosen people. And this is what he says. In closing, he says in Deuteronomy chapter 6, he says, "Listen, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone, and you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. And you must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands that I'm giving you today. Repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them when you're at home and when you're on the road, when you're going to bed and when you're getting up. Tie them to your hands and wear them on your forehead as reminders. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates." God knows the tendency of humankind. Every single one of us is broken. Every single one of us has sin in our hearts that drifts us away from the truth constantly. We're just naturally drifting away from that with our own passions, with our own desires. And God says, hey, here's the truth. Here's how you need to live. But you need to share that again and again with your children, with young people, with the next generation, and continually talk about these things, so that my truth prevails. And that's so important, guys. I mean, this excites me, but it should excite all of us. Regardless of if you've got kids or no kids, or maybe you've got grandkids or great-grandkids, or you're married, unmarried, remarried, whatever it is, wherever your life situation is, if you are an adult and you are a follower of Jesus, God's calling us to invest in the next generation because they're the future of the church. And it's more than just prolonging our faith. It's helping our faith prosper. It's more than just helping our faith survive. It's helping it to thrive, and investing in the next generation so that they can be the hands and feet of Jesus and be salt and light in the world. And that's so important for us to embrace. Because like it or not, and whether or not you're gonna live to see it, this generation will one day be leading your business, will be leading your communities, will be leading your schools. Or put it this way, will be leading your hospitals, your nursing homes. That's scary, right? We want to make sure that we're investing in them, leading your governments. And so it's so important that we invest in them and into the future of the church. And so we're going to spend some time in order to be able to understand how do we invest in the next generation. It's important for us to understand more about this generation of young people. And so for our kids and our students, their generation, the generation right now is Generation Z, okay? The generation before that is my generation, millennials. Any millennials out there? We have a terrible generation. And then the generation before that, I mean, come on, you couldn't, we had Gen Xers and it goes on before that. So yeah, that sounds about right. So there's a lot, every generation has its own challenges, has its own unique opportunities. And for sure, this is not gonna define every child or student, but this just gives us a good glimpse at the challenges that are going on in their world and helps us understand how to best invest in them. So we've got a lot of content that we're gonna just kind of go through, and then I'm really excited. We've got a panel of experts that are gonna come in and share with you guys just some really good stuff. But I do wanna just spend a little time talking about Generation Z, and we've got plenty of notes, so if you're a note taker, you're welcome. If you're not, sorry. But we've got a lot of little things here that I hope will be helpful for you to better understand this generation. So as we go through this, though, I want us to have just a picture that the Gospel of Matthew paints of the way that Jesus views young people. I want this to be the lens through which we look at young people and seeing, man, what is the heart of Christ? Because the heart of Christ is our calling as a church. And so how does he view young people? It says this in Matthew 19, verse 14 and 15, or 13 through 15. One day, some parents brought their children to Jesus so he could lay his hands on them and pray for them. The disciples scolded the parents for bothering him, but Jesus said, "Let the children come to me. Don't stop them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to those who are like children." And he placed his hands on their heads and blessed them before he left. And then a chapter before then, in Matthew 18, there's another encounter about children. About that time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Who's the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" Jesus called a little child to him and put the child among them. And keep in mind at this time, I mean, in Jewish culture, kids were very much seen as kind of useless, unintelligent. They needed a lot of shaping, they needed a lot of growing, and that was about it. They didn't have any value really to bring. They needed to be shaped, and there's certainly some truth to that. But Jesus did something radical here. He said, "I tell you the truth, unless you turn from your sins and become like little children, you'll never get into the kingdom of heaven. So anyone who becomes as humble as this little child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And anyone who welcomes a little child like this on my behalf is welcoming me. But if you cause one of these little ones who trust in me to fall into sin, it would be better for you to have a large millstone tied around your neck and be drowned in the depths of the sea." Jesus has such a massive heart, such a massive compassion and desire for young people to know him. And with that comes a great intensity in trying to protect young people. My wife and I have been watching a show. There's a new season out on Netflix, and it's always problematic when this comes up because we don't have lives then. But there's a show called Alone. Has anyone here heard of Alone? Heard of that show? It's on the History Channel. They're these guys who are like survival experts, and they just send 10 people out. They each get 10 items, and they say, "Good luck, survive as long as you can. Winner gets like $1 million or something like that." And it's crazy because they're just trying to survive on their own. And so many times they have encounters with bears. And one of the biggest things, one of the most common things they talk about with bears is, man, if you see cubs, don't mess with the cubs. Because where there are bear cubs, there's gonna be a mama bear close behind. And if mama bear feels like her cubs are threatened, you're in trouble, right? Like gloves are coming off and she's coming for you. She's dropping all inhibitions and going for you. I can remember I got the privilege of getting to backpack on the Appalachian Trail for a week several years ago. And at one point we woke up, we had our little tarp shelters, and it was like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I hear some rustling right outside, right on the edge of our camp, and I see these 2 little bear cubs. I was like, oh my gosh, they're so cute. What if we go pet them? You know, like that's kind of like my initial thought, because they're just these little guys. But then that other thought comes in, man, if we even come near them, we got to hope that these cubs don't come any closer and they kind of veer off, because we don't want to upset mama bear. Some of you guys, you know what I'm talking about because you grew up in a home and you were raised by a mama bear, right? Or some of you are married to a mama bear, that if you mess with mama bear's cubs, those claws are coming out, and you're in trouble, right? I can relate. I grew up in a home where I can remember a time where I was going to McDonald's. My mom was taking us to McDonald's. That was a special treat. And I ordered a cheeseburger, but I said no pickles because I don't want pickles. I told my mom to order no pickles. And so we get through the line. She pays for it. We get to the next window. They give us the food. It smells, you can smell the fries, and it's just, instantly salivating. So I open up the wrapper to my cheeseburger. I take a bite, and can you guess what I had? I had pickles on it. And it was sickening, and I was upset, and I was hurt. And now, this was a time where things were simpler. I was a little more sensitive. I was only 21 at the time. But no. I was maybe 4 or 5, and I can remember just kind of like, oh, they put pickles on the sandwich. Man, Mama's bear's cubs were threatened. So Mama bear gets back into the drive-thru, and I can remember as a 4 or 5-year-old, I'm like, Mom, it's not that big of a deal. I can just take the pickles off. But no one was stopping her at that point. It was done. And so she, laid into the employees, and I just had to kind of sit there as a 4 or 5-year-old, like, sorry guys, and just feeling bad. But my point is that, man, Jesus has such an intense passion for young people. He'll do anything he can to protect them. And that's why he gives this strict warning to people, to us who are investing in young people. It says, man, if you lead them down the wrong path, if you teach them things that are contrary to my word, it would be better if we just tied a rope around your neck, weighed it down, and drowned you in the bottom of a lake. That's Jesus' words. And so that's a sobering reality, and should just give us a minute to pause and make sure that we're being good stewards of the young people that God's put before us as a church. And we have throughout the school year, we have about 200 to 300 kids and students that come each week to be a part of our programming here at First Free Church. And I looked it up, and since this past January, we've had 720 kids from birth to seniors in high school come and be a part of some programming here, First Free Church. That's staggering. 720, that's an amazing, amazing thing that God would entrust us with that many young people's lives, that God would give us an opportunity to have an impact on that many young people's lives. But at the same time, it's a sobering thought to say, man, God's trusting us with that. Sinful, broken people. And so it should just give us pause to think about how do we best steward that well and care for them. Because each and every one of those kids and students, they need adults investing in their lives. There was a researcher who spent some time just noting that there were a lot of high schoolers who would graduate from a church, and when they graduated high school, they walked away. A lot of them walked away from their faith as they got into college or into career. They decided to say, okay, what separates the students that graduate high school and actually keep their faith? They would say they owned their faith. Their faith was their own. What does that look like? What separates that group of students that seem to just thrive when they graduate high school in their relationship with Jesus from those who just seem to fall away as soon as they graduate? And they found 2 things, 2 key indicators of people, of students who graduate and have real faith that's their own. The first is that they're serving regularly, that they're acting out their faith. They're involved in serving in the church. They're active in serving in their communities. And they're active in serving outside of the boundaries of their church and their communities. The second key indicator of a student graduating high school with a faith that's their own is that they have 5 caring, godly adults speaking life, love, and truth into their lives. Now, we've got some amazing families here at the church, and it's just really cool to see how invested a lot of our parents are. But even those students and kids who grow up in a family who's invested in the church, who's invested in them, who's raising them up to be godly young men and women, even those families still only have 2 caring adults. Which means what? Which means that kid or that student, they need 3 other adults investing in their lives. The church needs you. The young people need you and me to invest in them. So let's jump into just, I want to talk about 3 characteristics that I think kind of encapsulize quite a bit of Generation Z and give you a better understanding of some of their strengths and some of their challenges. And so just to have I have a word or a phrase to kind of go through these 3 characteristics. So the first thing that I want to talk about with Generation Z is that they are screenagers. Screenagers. I didn't come up with that. I wish I did. That's pretty clever, isn't it? Screenagers. Generation Z is on their screens a lot, more so than ever before. And there's more screens than ever before, so that kind of makes sense. There's a study done during the pandemic to kind of see screen use before and after the pandemic hit. Before the pandemic hit, the average kid or student spent 3.8 hours a day on screens outside of school. So this has nothing to do with school, whether it was online or in person. It was 3.8 hours per day on screens outside of school. That number jumped from 3.8 hours a day to 7.7 hours a day during the pandemic. Y'all, that's 7 days a week. That's more than a full-time job. All right, so, and that's outside of the screens and things that they're on at school, or maybe they're doing online school, which adds to that. So this is a generation, and I'm not commenting whether that's good or bad, like it or not, that's reality. That's just where we are at. And this is something that's going to continue to be a part of reality. There's not, measures being taken in schools or in workplaces of less screens. It's only becoming more prevalent. And so this is a part of their future, that they're going to need to learn to adapt in a world that's increasingly more in front of screens. I mean, there's entire careers that have been developing over the pandemic that are sitting employees in front of a screen all day. But it's important to just know this, that our students are really involved in screens. And what's really interesting about this is that our students now have way more ability to influence the world now because of screens, because of the internet, than ever before. That's why Generation Z is already the generation of today. So the question is not, how do we prepare them for when they're influencing the world? The question is, how do we equip them right now? Because they are influencing the world. They are changing the world. And so it's important for us to understand, to enter into their world, to understand, to listen to them, to just get to know them better, because their world is shaping our world. Their world is shaping our world. This is the first time in human history, really, that now we adults, we're downstream of young people. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen y'all adopt the trends like 2 years after, everyone crowded Facebook, and then all of the teens were like, yep, see ya. And we see that in each different trend that goes on is young people are guiding culture and guiding society today. And so it's so important that we help them. Now with that, there's a tragic irony that these young people are so connected online. I mean, they can just access relationships so quickly and so easily, and yet they're the most relationally disconnected generation ever. I mean, as far back as the research goes, the loneliness rates are higher in this generation than ever before. Because while every other generation in human history had to learn how to connect online, I mean, some of y'all, you remember AOL Instant Messenger where you're like, how does this work? I can I can send a text and they'll get it immediately and I don't have to open the email, right? Like every other generation had to learn how to connect online. This generation has to learn how to connect offline. The internet was the default. That's their world. That's what they're used to. And that's not a bad thing, but it's an adjustment. And they need your help learning how to connect. It becomes our job to connect with the disconnected. That's our calling as a church, is to connect with the disconnected. Now, many of you've needed young people at some point to help teach you technology, whether it's setting up the printer, getting your internet Wi-Fi set up, mobile hotspot. Some of you're still holding out because you're too ashamed to ask them how to increase the text size on your phone so you can read it, right? We need young people to help us with those, but in the same way, they need you to model for them what it means to have godly, intentional, authentic relationships with other people so that they can be better equipped to share the gospel with those around them and that they can be better equipped to have community and experience that the way that we were meant to as human beings. And that's something I love about our small group leaders and our adult volunteers and Kid Connection and student ministries and just how they just model what it means to build relationships, authentic relationships, just being open and honest and connecting and just listening and talking. Just how do you interact with each other? I mean, just the simple doing life together. And I love that. All right, so first characteristic is that they're screenagers. Second characteristic of Generation Z that's really noteworthy is mental health. The other downside or potential downside to the screen use of young people is that there's been a lot of research, tons of research, showing the connection between screen use and mental health struggles, whether it's anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation. There's been so much research showing that the increase of the increase of screen time has led to the increase of these mental health struggles, these issues, and more so than ever before, especially when it comes to the use of social media. And I have a graph here that kind of helps you see the last 40 years. And this is young people for the past 40 years and trends. And you'll notice that there's certain things on there that we would kind of consider pretty traditional delinquent behavior. Drug use, cigarettes, premarital sex. Those rates have steadily declined over the years. Even the use of TV has dropped quite a bit. But then you notice what goes up the other way. Screen use, feelings of hopelessness, seriously considering suicide. These rates have increased. And this study, this research is from 2019. If you look at things post-pandemic, those rates have skyrocketed for this generation. And so it's really important to start thinking about whether you've got kids in your home or you have some sort of relationship, some sort of mentoring relationship, or God's placed some young people in your life to make an impact. How much time do you spend talking about the kind of traditional delinquent behaviors and issues, which again, those are important to touch on. They still exist. But how much time do you spend talking about those things, and then how much time do you talk about the reality of mental health with them? And you may say, well, Steve, mental health, it wasn't really an issue in my generation. We just sucked it up and blah, blah. That's whatever. whatever your thoughts on mental health are, whether you think that, oh, we're over-prescribing or we're over-diagnosing or whatever those thoughts are, it doesn't really matter because you might be right. Maybe it wasn't an issue in your generation, but it is in this generation. And it's a real thing. This isn't something that's been made up. And this is something that this generation is really struggling with, and they need people that they can feel like they can trust and talk to. And it starts with you opening up conversations with them. Because here's the reality. What you don't talk about speaks the loudest. What you don't talk about speaks the loudest. When you don't talk about something, guess what? These young people, they're gonna be talking about it with someone. And if it's not you, it's someone else. And you not talking about that communicates to them that you're not a safe person to talk to about it. And so they'll go anywhere else to have those conversations. And so we as Christ Church, as his body of believers, as adults, need to have the courage to step into these difficult conversations and just listen. We need to connect with the disconnected by just hearing their story, hearing their pain, hearing their struggle, and just be there and be available and step into those. Third, so we've got screenagers, mental health. Third characteristic I want to talk about is I want to call this generation the Shark Tank generation. I made this one up, so I'm pretty proud of this one, okay? The Shark Tank generation. If you haven't seen Shark Tank, great show. It's about some rookie entrepreneurs who will come up to these multi-million-dollar investors and try to pitch their ideas, pitch their companies, their inventions, whatever it is, and try to get an investor to give them money. And so there's a lot of bartering, and it's a whole lot of fun to watch, pretty entertaining. I'm convinced, my wife and I, we have an 18-month-old, and he was, after he was born, we were in the postpartum room, and we spent pretty much a whole day just passing the time watching Shark Tank. So I'm pretty sure that our son is gonna be on Shark Tank someday and become an entrepreneur, maybe making millions. I mean, we can only hope. So, but it's a great show. But I think this generation, in fact, the research shows they have a large capacity for entrepreneurship. They have a huge entrepreneurial spirit. Now, this generation, they were born after 9/11. They don't know what that was like. You know, I'm sure almost everyone in this room that was alive for that can remember where you were when that happened. I mean, it was a huge moment in our nation's history. They were born after that, and a lot of them watched their parents go through not just the fearful time of feeling vulnerable as a nation, but also through the housing market crash in 2008. And watch their parents struggle with the realization that their, perceived stability on finances was falling apart. They didn't maybe know what was ahead in their future financially. And so this generation has a very, very large desire to have financial stability, way more than the past few generations. I mean, millennials, we just, wanted to get in our tiny homes and not have any money and travel the world and beg people for money so we can eat food. But this generation, they're all about financial security. I'm pretty sure it's because of Generation Z that everywhere you go now, they ask you for a tip. And you're like, what am I even tipping? They literally gave it, I went and prepared this food and you're asking me for a tip now, right? Because they're like, man, how can we just get more financial security? And so Generation Z is really big on that. And you combine that with the world being at their fingertips with technology and their ability to create and to connect so easily. Now you can be a content creator on YouTube. You can be a celebrity on TikTok. You can be an influencer on Instagram. You can use these different ways. And I mean, you can do it at 8 years old. You don't have to be a full-grown adult to do these things. And some of you, you know what I'm talking about. You've walked in and you've seen your kid or a student watching a YouTube video of a dude playing video games, right? And they're making like a career out of that. And that's just like the world's at their fingertips. The opportunities are endless. They can create as much as they want through these options. And so you combine those two things, this world at their fingertips and this desire for financial security. It's like, I can do this. I can create a career from this. And so there's a massive, massive entrepreneurial spirit. And it's an amazing thing. There's some great opportunities there. And what that entrepreneurial spirit has led to, and this is really cool, is this generation is really passionate about wanting to be able to help people. Whether that's through developing some new technology or just being a part of a project or raising awareness for something, this generation just goes above and beyond trying to help. This generation has such a high value for compassion. And I don't want us to miss that. That's an incredible thing. That's the heart of Jesus. And I'm talking about this generation like outside the church too. They sometimes understand the heart of Jesus better than we do. But the issue is this generation always compassionate? Absolutely not. Right, you just have to go onto a Twitter feed or wherever they're at, go on to anything and you see there's not a whole lot of compassion in this world. The reality is this generation values compassion, but it's more about just feeling compassionate or appearing compassionate. And that's why this generation needs our help, needs you to step in and just create some opportunities to really make a difference and channel that compassion into doing something. See, they're young people today, they have so much access to information. I mean, there's news of giant events happening all over the world every single day. And everyone seems to think, man, we need a big solution to this big problem. And you think of all the hot button issues of today, LGBTQ+, you think of global warming, or abortion, or taxes, or the economy, whatever it is, and you have politicians on both sides of the aisle grandstanding and saying, I have the solution, I've got a big solution for this, and they come up with all these sensational ideas and say like, I will fix this, I know how to do it. But the reality is sensational solutions make people feel good. Small solutions make people do good. Small solutions is where people actually get involved and do something about it instead of just feeling like they're making a difference. We had an opportunity with our middle school and high school students this past June, had the opportunity to go out of state for our high schoolers and then over to Kansas City with our junior hires and get to serve in different contexts, get to be exposed to people of different socioeconomic backgrounds and just get a real chance to see our students get to serve out of their comfort zone. And it was so amazing to be able to just see the way that they just got to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And so our high schoolers were down in Memphis, Tennessee, and we partnered with a ministry called Service Over Self. And Service Over Self has been down in the heart of Memphis for almost 40 years now. And their mission has been really simple. It's share the love of Jesus through construction, through, more specifically, repairing roofs. And so it was fun getting to see our students get to go up on the roofs and actually repair roofs for these people who couldn't afford to put one over their head. And what I love about the ministry of Service Over Self is, you think about it and you go, you know what though, but there's so much more to a house than just a roof. And there's so much more to someone's livelihood than a house. And there's so much more to someone's core being than just like their physical luxuries and physical comfort. But what's been so amazing to see is the countless lives that have been touched by this ministry over 40 years that's just said, we're gonna have a simple solution. We're gonna have a simple mission and value of just helping put roofs over people's heads and the conversations that come out of that and the opportunities to share Jesus with people in both word and deed. I mean, we saw it in our week. We saw, not just homeowners getting to feel the love of Jesus, but you have neighbors walking alongside and they do kind of one of those double takes, like why are there teenagers up on this roof? And we just get to have these opportunities to tell them, hey, this is because we're from a church out in St. Louis and we just want to share the love of Jesus with you by showing you, by just giving you a roof and just working on this. And it's just been amazing. And so, guys, small solutions make people do good. So, I guess the question is, how do we help them think of small solutions? And part of that is just talking with young people, asking them what they're passionate about. Ask them what needs they've noticed. That means not disparaging them for being really concerned about something that maybe you're not concerned about, or disparaging them for just trying to do something simple to be a part of that solution. And instead encouraging that entrepreneurial spirit and seeing how can we make a difference in these small ways? I was just talking to a mom recently who their student was just really passionate about, man, I hate the treatment of animals in the way that they're being processed in some of these mass facilities. How do I make a difference? And so they said, hey, let's be more intentional about the products that we buy from companies that are actually, being good stewards of God's creation, and buying from companies that, yes, God's given us this food to eat, but he's also given us dominion to care for these animals while they're in our care. So I love that. So if big solution, or if big problems require small solutions and not sensations, you need to start small by connecting with the disconnected. And I've already said that a couple times before, and that's no accident. The answer to this question, how do we invest in the next generation, is that simple. It's just connecting with them, just listening, hearing them, talking with them, getting to know them. Just build relationships with them, whatever that context may be for you. I mean, that could be down in Kid Connection or in student ministries in a more formal way. Yeah, there's always going to be needs there, and we'd love to talk more about that. But maybe God's putting on your heart some other opportunities to get involved in just investing one or two young people. My dad used to teach me a lot about finances growing up, and one thing that always stuck with me was that he'd say, Steve, when you're getting the paycheck, when you're getting whatever your income is, just take a small chunk of that. I mean, it can be small enough that you don't even really notice it's gone, but just put it away and invest it. And you may not even think about it. You may not realize that it's gone because it's a small amount, but at some point down the road, it's going to get to a point where you can't miss it. And that's what it's like with investing in young people. It's these small moments, just listening to them, just walking alongside them, hearing their stories, getting to know them, showing interest in their lives. And then maybe, just maybe, you'll have earned the place to speak into their lives and do what God commanded the Israelites, to share truth with them and to pass on our faith to them. There's plenty more we could talk about, but like I said, I really wanted to spend some time with a panel. We've got a group of experts that really have dedicated their lives to this subject, to this generation. And so I just want us to, if you don't mind, just joining me in welcoming them to the stage and just hear from them yourselves. Can we welcome them as they come up? And I just got to say, we didn't plan the black shirt thing, but this is a great illustration of the impact you can have on young people. If you spend enough time, they just want to match you. So, right? Oh, okay, maybe not. So guys, before we just jump into asking a little bit about hearing from your story and hearing your thoughts on this subject of investing in you. Why don't you just introduce yourself? Tell us your name, what grade are you going into, or where are you heading this fall? Maybe what's your involvement at school? Do you have any extracurriculars or anything? So we'll start with you, Caleb.
Well, thank you for having me. Hello? There we go. We got it now. All right. Well,
you're supposed to be good with technology. What is it?
I know. It was on. So my name's Caleb Miller. I go to Lindbergh High School. I just finished my junior year there, and I'm going to be going to my senior year this fall. For extracurriculars, I play football in the fall, and then in the spring, I'm going to be playing volleyball as well.
Hi, my name is Carly Vanessa Delft. So I just finished up my sophomore year, so I'm heading into my junior year at Parkway South High. And I guess for extracurriculars, I do a lot of soccer, and I enjoy running.
My name is Whitney Benting, and I just finished my freshman year at Westminster, and I'm involved in lacrosse in the spring.
My name is Alex Lai. I will be going to 8th grade at Crestview Middle School, and I'll be doing hockey in the winter.
And my name is Caroline Sloneker. I just graduated from Rittner. I'm attending MOBAP in the fall to study elementary and early childhood education. And when I was in high school, I participated in Color Guard.
So let me start with this. What do you wish adults knew about young people?
Just to start that off, I would say just from personal experience, I would hope and just kind of see adults appreciate the ideas and maybe the knowledge that we have, and not only just in real life, but also about the knowledge of the word, because even though we're a lot younger, they can seem to, at least from my experience, they've been putting our age along with what our knowledge is, and in reality, we can have a lot of knowledge about the Lord and also have a lot of knowledge about just real life things, even though we haven't been on this earth as long as they have, so.
Kind of going off of what Caleb said, I think that a lot of us teens have kind of felt like devalued because like adults don't think that we know as much because of our age. And I think along with that comes like a pressure to grow up faster and to mature more because we think that we need to prove something to the adults in our lives that we know stuff, we can do stuff just as well as they can.
Yeah, and what Steve was saying earlier about mental health, like it's a lot more common nowadays. And I feel like if you go to adults nowadays, they're gonna say, oh, well, like you have more life coming. Like your struggles are not as real as you seem. Like you're gonna be fine, but they're just as important.
Yeah, and I'll be the one to bring up the phones. I think of a lot of adults think that the phones are like ruining our lives. And while I agree that, like Steve said, there's lots of mental health rates that are crises that are rising, correlation isn't always causation. And I think a lot of the times teens tend to go to the phones as an outlet for a problem that's already there. And so it's kind of hard to figure out if it's the phone that's the issue or something else that the phone's just covering up.
Yeah, like our phone is an outlet. It's how we show to our friends on how we're feeling at the current moment. And like, if there's like something wrong with us, like we're having trouble keeping good grades in school and just like having a little bit of mental health issues, they might take away the phone thinking that is the problem, but like our phone is our ally in this case because it shows our friends how we are feeling and like we can tell we can communicate with our friends through our phone to tell them how we are doing and if we need any help or not.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, sometimes we as adults can simplify issues and say, well, it's just because of the time spent and that's it. And there may be more complex answers to that question. So it's our desire as a church to invest in you guys. And so I'd love to just hear, how has the church developed you as an individual person?
So overall, the church has been able to not just help me grow in my faith, but it's also been able to help me with greeting people with respect and love. Just like as Jesus would, I want to be able to respect people. I want to be able to greet them with kindness and with like humbleness and hospitality. And it's been able to help me figure out who I am as a person and who I am as to greeting people in general.
Yeah, so for me, the church has really welcomed me in and done a good job on loving me and all that stuff. And I think that it's really important because as the church has been loving me and welcoming me and just showing me who Christ is and what he's like, I'm then able to reciprocate that onto other people. And then it kind of just like a chain where it's like, I get the love, and then like I can show it to other people. And I just think that's really important.
Yeah, for me, it's really helped because some of my struggles, I became to realize that I should not be ashamed or feel guilty for putting them on God. And I think it's also really helped me be like more like welcoming for my friends so they can easily come to me. And obviously I don't know everything, but I can just be there for them.
Awesome. All right, so as we talk about, I mentioned mentors in some capacity. Parents can be mentors, small group leaders, or some sort of other, or adult volunteers, or there's some more of those formal, but there's also just informal mentors, adults who are just investing in you in the day-to-day. What do you want from an adult who's investing in your life? Like, do they need to be cool? Because if so, I may need to walk off this stage and just give up. But what do you look for them?
Well, I think going off of the cool thing, I think everybody kind of has like a different like definition of what cool is.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you for including me in that.
Yep.
No cap, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
that's about right.
Yeah.
Steve likes to try hard to be cool, and sometimes it's not cool. Sometimes it's like kind of cringe, and that's like not too good, because
You're putting me on full blast,
yep,
as they say. Is that good?
yeah, yep, that was right, Steve. But sometimes he uses them in the wrong context, and then it's like, okay, Steve, like let's bring it down a notch. Like we get it, you're trying to be cool. But I think that for a mentor, they just need to be able to be like willing to learn from us, willing to understand us. I think that like even though they're a mentor, like the relationship is still two-sided. They can learn from us still, and I think that we have a lot to teach them and a lot to give them. And I think that that's something that like I like from a mentor, that I need from a mentor, is just that willingness to understand me, to learn from me, and to just be aware of like the things that I'm going through.
Yeah, I think cool has a lot of meanings for me. It doesn't mean the same as everybody else. When I think of like a mentor and kind of what I would like, what would make me feel comfortable, is somebody who like doesn't judge me, obviously, first of all. And also someone who doesn't just look for the silver lining on everything. If I'm going through something, I don't want them to be like, well, at least you have this, And I think just sometimes it's important to have someone who will just listen to you and just say, yeah, that's not okay. And like, I'm here. And that's just like all I need to hear sometimes.
Yeah, I agree with you a lot, Carly. And then I also think if I go to an older person, I'm not always looking for advice, but just for comfort or someone to be like, what can I do for you? Like, how can I make you feel better? Because sometimes I don't want them to be like, oh, it'll be over soon. Like, you're fine. Like, just deal with it.
So would it be helpful in a situation like that for someone to ask you, hey, what do you need from me right now?
Yes.
I love it. I've learned that. Well, I'm still learning that from my wife. I'm not good at practicing it, but yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. So what hopes do you guys have for your generation?
Overall, just hopes. I think I would say just very hopeful for how we're able to spread the gospel, be able to spread the love of Jesus, both online and in person. Because I know with age, it can also come with maturity, and we're able to do a lot better with in-person and interpersonal skills with greeting people, like I was saying earlier. But also being able to have all those outlets and all these different just availabilities online, just being able to go online, share that gospel, share the love of Jesus overall, and just being able to further that truth into the hearts of our generation and not just the older generation here on earth.
Man, I love that. You guys, did he speak for you guys? Was that pretty good? I think that was great. Put that on a plaque. I love that. No, that's great. So, we talked about maybe how the church has developed you, but how can the church be better at reaching your generation and reaching young people with the gospel?
I think making the church look fun and not always like looking so perfect, because like the church is not a perfect place. Like it should be fun. like where you come in community. And so we have down 5 F's: food, fun, fellowship, friends, and faith. And I think those all go together because you're with your community.
Yeah, this is a really good question, and I decided to reach out to some of my friends to see kind of how the church could welcome them, because I feel pretty welcomed, but I've also grown up in the church, and so I wanted to get a different perspective on people who had not. So the main thing that I gathered from what people had said was that there's lots of stereotypes with church. So for example, like everybody kind of comes to church dressed all nice, we go worship, and we go back. And I think people just kind of get shied away and scared from that. One of my friends had a really good response. She's LGBTQ, and I was talking to her, and sorry, and she said that it wasn't that she didn't feel welcomed, but she didn't quite know where she'd belong, and she didn't know if people would hate her for who she is, or kind of like where she would fit in. And I thought about this, and I was like, wow. And I was like, the real question shouldn't be how can I fit into church, or how can I change who I am to like come, but it should be who is Jesus, and how can I meet him, and how can I be with him?
Yeah, I agree with that a lot, because I also have a friend, I have a few friends actually, that I tell them about church and they kind of get shunned away from it because they feel like they aren't up to the standards of what someone going to church should be like. When, in the most part, like overall, like Jesus doesn't want us to be like fake, or doesn't want us to put on a mask. Like dressing up and going to church is always a great thing, but we always don't have to show up like everything is all right, because Jesus wants us to be genuine. He wants us to be true to him. He wants us to come to him for our problems and our trials that we might be going through, and just putting on that mask just is not a genuine relationship. So we just want to make sure that we can let our generation know, and the younger people, that coming to church, no one is perfect, and everybody has their own stuff going on in their lives, and there's no need to put on that mask and act like everything is okay. Like, Jesus wants you to come to him with your problems, your trials, and everything included.
Yeah, I think another big thing, at least like for me when I was new to my faith, was just being really confused by like all of the like Christianese that we use, like sanctification, salvation, like all these like big words that you're like, at, 10, 12, you're like, what does this mean? Like, you have no idea what it means, and nobody's really taking the time to explain it to you. And I think that's a big thing of reaching people with the gospel, not just teens, but adults too, is just explaining those words and just diving deep into what they mean so that you can have like a really clear understanding of your faith.
I love that. That's great. I've got a question for you guys, and I think I speak for all the adults in the room when we say you guys got some weird trends, and we don't understand them. And so can you just give us a little glimpse into your world? Give us a couple trends so we can be cool and hip for the next couple weeks before those trends are gone. What do you got for us?
Okay, so I have an idea just from that question alone. So there is this app going around. It's been around for a little bit, but it just started getting really popular recently. A few of you guys might know it. It's called Be Real. So it's an app that allows everybody can download the app, but there is always at the exact same time, not every day. It can be a different time. It could be early in the morning. It could be later in the afternoon. It could be in the middle of the day as well.
It could be right now.
It could be right now.
Yeah,
Yes,
so if you
it could
see
happen
them
right now.
get their cameras up and start taking pictures, that's why.
Yeah, so basically a short description is that notification is sent out, and you have 2 minutes to post a picture with your back camera and with your front-facing camera, kind of like a selfie. But you're basically just taking a picture of what you're doing in that moment. You're just being real with whoever you're having following, whoever is letting you follow them, and you're just being real in that moment, and you're able to see a little bit of glimpse of what everybody's doing in their lives. So it could be anything. It could be walking your dog. It could be you're out on a cruise, vacation. It could be absolutely anything, and people will just see a little glimpse of what you're doing in that moment at that time.
I'm just waiting for the congregation to adopt this, and so there's one time on a Sunday morning, everyone's just pulling up their phones in the middle. Yeah. What else? Are there any others?
I have one. Okay, so I work across from a movie theater, and we have people that come in all of the time, like dressed really like fancy in like full suits, like the jacket, the tie, everything. And at the beginning, I was like, why are these people like coming in here? I'm like, did they just come from like a wedding? Like, is it a funeral? Like, I'm really confused about what's happening. And then I saw it on TikTok and I was like, okay, this is what this is. It's the new Minion movie. People are going dressed in like full suits to see this Minion movie. And the other thing that they were trying to do was they were like throwing bananas at the screen because that's what the Minions do, like they like bananas. And so they were like throwing them at the screen and like making messes of all the movie theaters. But it's been like really entertaining to see people walk in to like a fast food restaurant dressed in a full suit and like nobody knowing why they're in there dressed like that. But it's really entertaining to see like once you know what it is and you're like, yep, I know exactly where they were.
That's fantastic. I never thought I'd live to see a day when businesses would actually shut people out for being too nicely dressed. And that's what we've seen at some movie theaters. So, all right, we've talked about the importance of adult mentors and just adults pouring into you guys. And I've mentioned a few ways in which there's some adults here at the church, whether it's in Kid Connection with our staff or some of our small group leaders and student ministries. What do you most appreciate about your small group leaders? You're all in small groups.
I have two really amazing small group leaders, and there's a really, really, really long list of things that I appreciate about them. But I think one of the main things is that it's always a judgment-free zone. And so I'll like finish talking to them and being like, yep, here's my life. And they'll ask questions and they just won't judge. And it just feels really nice to have someone who may not always understand, but won't judge and tries to. And it makes me feel really important and loved.
Yeah, my small group leaders, they're like really curious of what's going on in my own life. So usually Sunday night after the summit talk, we have small groups and they really like ask deep questions to try to get us to open up. And they really want to know what's going on in our lives, not just because it's like a routine or they have to do it, but because they're genuinely curious.
Yeah, so like my small group leader, some of you guys might know him, Jason Cunningham, but like either way, he's like always super friendly. He always wants to know what's going on with our life. Is there anything that he could help with us? And just like, he just wants to know what's going on with our life and just if there's anything that he can do to help with us. So just thank you, Jason.
Yeah, so my small group leaders are super gracious. They're very understanding with my small group, and they're able to be super understanding about what we want to talk about, because my small group can definitely get a little rambunctious and a little off topic once in a while. So being able to be super gracious about what we want to talk about and then at some point bring us back in is super helpful, and they just really understand us as who we are and how old we are and just what we're interested in. So.
I really love how open and honest my small group leaders are. If one of us opens up about something that we're struggling with, they're always pretty quick to like tell us if they struggled with it before, which really helps me just to know like somebody else has struggled with it, that I'm not alone, that they know what I'm going through, what I'm feeling.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. And we've got some just amazing volunteers throughout this church that are investing in young people. And I hope that was an encouragement to them to hear that the investment they're making in your lives is having an impact. So that's great. Let me close with one last question for you. As we wrap up our time here, what would you, if you could give some kind of practical advice for some adults in this room who are saying, man, maybe I should, I do need to get plugged into some way of investing in young people. What advice would you give them as they seek to do that?
I would definitely say find an age group that you love, whether that's here at church with the little kids or if that's somewhere out in your community. Just find a group that you love and just serve with them, serve around them. It's definitely cool to see your leaders serve with you. I've had my leaders, like our grad leaders, have all been with us since 6th grade. So it's been really cool just to be with them for 6 or 7 years. And I think they probably think that it's cool to see us grow and just how we've grown in our faith. And it's also cool for us to see how they just stick with us and have been with us for so long and just keep pouring into us and pursuing us.
Well, I think the first thing that's important is just to meet us. Not all of us are the same, for better and for worse. and just don't jump to conclusions. Just try to listen, but really listen with the intent to understand. Even if you can't, just try to understand. And I think after you listen with that intention of understanding, the investing part comes so much easier.
And before I mention this, he did not pay me to say this, he did not tell me to, but becoming a small group leader is also a great way, I think, that you can get involved with the younger generation. Just being able to get plugged in with them and being able to be surrounded by that younger generation, I think is just a great way to get invested. And but in all reality, I would say whenever you might encounter like a teen, whenever you might just see them either on the street or someone you know in your family, and someone that you might just randomly see, just talk to them genuinely about anything, and just try and be more invested in what they care about. I mean, maybe do a little bit of research. You definitely don't have to, but just understanding like the trends we have, or like the stuff that we care about at this time of age, I feel like is a great way to get more invested into our generation. And just not putting on an act like you feel like you have to talk to us, or like you have to feel like you have to talk about what's going on latest in our lives, but also just diving deep into what we care about and what we cherish at this age. So
Yeah, thanks. You guys have really, some of you, just in your answers, what struck me is you're really modeling for us what it looks like to reach your generation, which is just by being present with other people your age. Some of you just mentioned talking to your own friends who aren't involved in a church and asking them questions and seeing what their experience with the church is. And that's such an amazing example of what we as the church ought to be doing with anyone we encounter, but also with young people, and just asking them questions and building relationships and getting to know them. Because if we don't know why they're not involved in a church, we're never gonna know how to reach them with the gospel. So I love that. Thank you. Can we give these guys a hand and just thank them for... You guys are awesome. And I just want to close in prayer, and then we'll head out. God, thanks so much for all that you've given us. Thank you for the opportunity we have to meet together here each week. God, what a privilege it is. And God, I want to thank you for the death of your son, Jesus, on the cross, God, that every single one of us has failed and has fallen short and has just imperfections of our own, God, and we need you. And so thank you for your son, Jesus, who died for us so that we could have eternity with you. God, I thank you for the opportunity this morning to talk about what it looks like to invest in the next generation, something that's just so close to your heart, God, so near and dear to your heart. And so, Lord, I just pray that you would just allow First Free, enable and equip First Free to be a community of believers that takes seriously the calling you've placed on us, both as a community, but also as individuals, to invest in the lives of young people. And God, I pray that you would just give us clarity in where you're calling each of us to find pockets, whether that's formally in a ministry context like our family ministries here, or informally, and just building relationships that are more organic with students. And God, I just thank you so much for the opportunity that you've given us before us with the kids and the students that you've put in our path here at the church. And God, just may we be a church that stewards that well. And God, correct us when we're going off stray. And Lord, I just pray for a blessing on the rest of our day. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Don't forget, you can head to efree.org/discussion as you connect with your small groups and discussion groups throughout the week, just to continue this conversation. But thank you, and have a great rest of your Sunday.